Okay, guys. So now let's start for today's session, right? So this week, there is no much theory part, right? So from theory perspective, we will only cover that gateway load balancer, right? As I said that while covering that classic load balancer, network load balancer, and the application load balancers, that we will cover that gateway load balancer later, right? The reason was that because that gateway load balancer is used for that third party devices, while that network load balancers, application load balancers, or the outdated classical load balancers, these load balancers we covered, these were used for that AWS services, right? When we have to manage the traffic on AWS services, right? For that AWS instances, for that we were using that load balancers. So now when I'm saying that we will cover that gateway load balancers, so that means we will cover and we will deploy any third party device, right? So as we discussed last week, right? So we will deploy a Palo Alto firewall on the cloud, right? So when I says that we will deploy a firewall, right? So I will cover two, three live scenarios that how generally organizations deploy the firewall and how generally they design the cloud environment with that firewall, right? So two or three times I will deploy that firewall, right, with the different scenarios. Just understand that if you have any concerns, let me know, right? We will sort it out at same point. After that, because now I will say is that the basics part are completed. So now we will mostly work on the designing stuff, right? So we will, whenever we will deploy any services or whenever now we will put any security controls, right? So I will tell you that, okay, this is the designs and these things which we have already covered, right? So I will tell you that, and I will let you know that how to deploy that control, how to configure that. But for that backend designs, which we have already covered, you have to and do your hands dirty, right? So now let's discuss our first design, right? So in that first design, what we will do, we will create one VPC, right? So that will be our basic design, right? So in that basic design, what we will do, we will create three availability zones, right? One availability zone for my public services or public resources, right? One I will create for my private services or private instances, right? And one availability zone I will create for my management, right? Then what we will do, as we know that to connect to any of the VPC, to connect to any of the VPC, what we do, we create one internet gateway, right? And that internet gateway connects to internet, and through that we are accessing. So in our first design, what we will do, we will create one Palo Alto, right? So we will deploy that Palo Alto. That Palo Alto we will deploy in management availability zone, right? Because whenever we have to access any of the network device or any of the security device, right? So we configure one management link, through that we are accessing that, right? So we will deploy one Palo Alto in management availability zone, right? So this will be our firewall. So one NIC I will, by default, whenever we deploy, right, there is a one network interface, right? So that is connected with the management interface, management availability zone. So as I have to connect to that private availability zone with that firewall, I have to connect public availability zone with that firewall. So as you know that we can create a elastic network interfaces, right? So one elastic network interface I will create and connect with that public availability zone. One elastic network interface I will create for a private availability zone and connect with that Palo Alto, right? Then we will do a routing, right? So how it will go to that internet gateway, whether it will go through that management interface or whether it will go through that public interface, right? So that we will design. So generally, we will allow the connectivity over the internet for my public ENI and for management one. Management one we will use to access our Palo Alto firewall, right? So that will be used for our control plane accesses, right? For our firewall patches, updates, for upgrades, right? We will use this management interfaces, right? However, for my dynamic net, whenever my database or my any EC2 instance has to access to the internet services through that Palo Alto firewall, right? Then it will send request to private ENI to Palo Alto. Then it will check the policies. After policies, it will check that NAT, and after NAT, that through that routing, it will go through that public ENI to my IGW, right? So this will be our first design, right? Then in that second design, we will create a little bit complex thing. Like with that same design, we have one Palo Alto, right? And we will create Palo Alto in failover, right? So we have a two separate Palo Altos in two different instances, right? I have created a public ENI for here, one private ENI for here, right? So in case of this EC2 instance down, right, or this Palo Alto goes down, so how AWS will automatically switch my network and virtual network interfaces, my elastic network interfaces from this instance to this instance, right? So we will cover this, right? That how my elastic network interfaces, which I have manually configured, right? Because when we will launch Palo Alto, there will be only one NIC that is for a management NIC, right? So how my public network interface and the private network interface, not on the Palo Alto level, that we are creating on the AWS level. So how that AWS actually switch that network interfaces from my primary to secondary one, right? This one. So these two practicals we will cover today, right? So tomorrow we will create one complex design, right? So that design generally organizations deploy in their each region. So when I'm saying that from organizations perspective, so what we will create one security VPC, right? Here I will have all my firewalls, right? My DLP solutions, my proxy, web proxy services, right? So whatever the antiviruses or whatever the security solutions I have, we will deploy that in security VPC. Then we will connect this VPC with my production VPC. We have production DC, whatever you said. Here I will have all my project servers, right? Like my domain controllers, my coding servers, where we deploy all our source codes or whatever the production applications they are running, right? So what if, let's suppose I have 18 projects in my US region which are running, right? Or the 18 project teams which are working on the cloud. So all their 18 servers will be in my cloud production data center, right? DC. Or then I will create one more VPC. That VPC is for my front end APIs or applications. Like if this is my on-prem environment, right? So all the users are connecting to this VPC where I have a servers, or I will say is that this is my client VPC or a non-prod VPC, whatever you want to say, right? So we will create one more VPC here. Then this VPC and this VPC will be interconnect with that TGW, right? Or if we can create one more VPC, that all three will be connect to that TGW. To for internal connectivity, they will communicate through that TGW, but whenever they have to send a request to the internet, right? Or if somebody has to access that request from internet to these services, then we will deploy one firewall here. So they all will send that request to that firewall, right? Through that firewall, it will process that inbound and outbound traffic for that VPCs, right? And last design which we will cover, that will be a little bit new for us, because in that third design we already know that what is TGW, what is attachments, but still we will cover that. And in the last design we will cover gateway load balancer. In that gateway load balancer, we will deploy one firewall behind that gateway load balancers, right? So that in case if I have to deploy one firewall in one availability zone, one firewall in one availability zone to manage a HA, right? Or if we have to deploy firewalls in active, right? Then how that gateway load balancer will manage that traffic, right? So these four designs we will cover in these two classes. So now what I will do, I will create one VPC. That is very basic design, right? So this is for actually just a basic deployment of firewall, so that you guys can understand that how we deploy that, understand the basic steps. So most of the concepts we already know, right? What is VPC, what is subnet, what is ENI, what is associates, subnet associates. There will be a few new features, right, that I will tell you that we are using while deploying any third party tool, right? So this is my security VPC. This is my security VPC. So here I will create 3 subnets. This will be my private subnet. That private subnet will be, that will be my private subnet. This will be my management subnet, and this will be my public subnet, right? So let's say we will use a management IP, 10.0.0.0/24, right? And for my public, I will use 10.0.1.0/24. And for private one, I will use 10.0.2.0/24, right? And this my security VPC is a subnet of 10.0.0.0/16. As you know that the we can use that subnet from /16 to /28, right? So I am using that security VPC for that. This will be my management subnet, this will be my private subnet, this will be my public subnet, right? Then we will deploy one firewall in a management interface. Then again we will jump to this design, right? So right now in my first step, what I am going to do, I am going to create one VPC, then I am going to create these 3 availability zones, right? So now let's jump. Okay, right. Guys, in between, if you have any concerns, right? So just raise that same point, right? I'm going to create VPC, security VPC. And the network I am going to assign is 10.0.0.0/16. I will go with that default, will not go with that dedicated one. Right. My security VPC is created. Let's do one thing. VPC name, security VPC, subnets. What I am going to use, management one, I am using 10.0.0.0/24. Public one, I will use 10.0.1.0/24, and private one, I will use 10.0.2.0/24. So I have created a VPC. Now I will jump to subnets, right? So let's select on which VPC I want to create that subnet. So I selected my security VPC, right? So my security VPC is 10.0.0.0/16 subnet. So let's create that subnet. My first will be management subnet, right? So that first will be 10.0.0.0/24. Name management subnet, that is okay. Now my public subnet, let's suppose I am going to give 10.0.1.0/24. Name is fine. Private subnet, I'm giving that 10.0.2.0/24. Done. I have created 3 subnets. Okay. This is my management subnet, public subnet, and private subnet, right? So now we already know, right, that whenever we create any VPC, right? So till now, what we have did, we created one VPC, right? 10.0.0. Then we created 3 availability zones or 3 subnets. But and how they will go to internet until we will not create IGW, right? Remember, whenever we first to send any traffic to outside or to access that resources within that VPC, that IGW should be created. And after creating that IGW, you have to attach that IGW to that VPC. Until you, after creating, if you will not attach that IGW to that VPC, you will face problem. And another thing you need to remember, that one IGW can be attached to only one VPC, right? So as you cannot share one IGW with the 2 different VPCs. So I have created VPC, I have created subnets. So now I'm going to create IGW. So let's security internet gateway, right? So I have created that security gateway. Now I have to attach this to my security VPC. So I am attaching to my security VPC. Done. So
Manpreet, just you have created subnets in the 3 different AZ or single AZ?
So I have created in, let me see, we can create in any of the AZ.
Any
So
of
I
the AZ,
have,
na?
yeah,
ABC, okay.
yeah.
Only
For
single
me,
AZ you have
yes.
created. Okay, okay. But
So
we can create in the three different AZ and under
yeah,
the VPC.
why it will not create any problem, because my default root is 10.0.0/16, right? So they all will be covered that at local root, so they can communicate within that VPC until I will not
Okay.
put any problem. So now I created one routing table. Oh, sorry. I have created IGW. So after creating IGW, now I have to tell them that which availability zone or which subnet should go to internet and which one should not go to internet, right? So now let's create a routing table. Okay, 1 second, guys. Let's add all the names. Default security route table. Yeah, this was the default routing table for my security VPC, right? So if I will see that it is covering all, right? So I can use that, but let's suppose this is our first time, so we will create two separate routing table. This one I will create my public CURITY. Okay, so I am creating one security public routing table, and I am selecting this for security VPC. Right now, I am creating one more security private routing table, and okay. Guys, if here where I can draw that so that there is no confusion. 1 second. MS Paint. M.0.0.0/16. So if this is my VPC, right? So what I did, I created 3 availability zones. This one was my management, this one was my public, and this one was my private availability zone. So for my management one, I have given IP 0.0/24. For my public one, I have given 1.0/24. Similarly, for my private one, I have given 2.0/24, right? And after that, I created one IG internet gateway here, right? And now we know that, right? For public one, definitely I need route to the internet. But for management one, I also need a route to the internet gateway. So I will, for these two availability zones, I will send that traffic to that internet. You know that, right? You have a better understanding While configuring that firewalls, that management interface is used for all the patching of that devices, right? For upgrades. For that is the reason I am sending that management subnet traffic as well to that internet. And for that public one, for private one, I will not send that traffic to the internet, right? So now I have created two security routing tables. So let's go to that public routing table, right? In that public routing table, I go to that subnet associations, that which subnets should be covered in this routing table. So edit, I will use my public routing table for my public subnets and for my management subnets. And in the routing table, I will click on edit, right? So I will add route for internet. It should go to internet gateway, for which internet gateway should go through that security gateway, right? So now my public routing table will cover my these two subnets, my management subnet and my public subnet. They will able to send to the internet traffic through this IGW, right? But my private subnet will not able to send because private subnet is not part of my public routing table subnet association. So this is my private routing table, right? So in that private routing table, I will says that, okay, so this routing table is for my private subnet, done. But I will not create any external routing table, right? Because I don't want that this subnet communicate to that internet through IGW, right? So we want that they send all the traffic to the Palo Alto, right? So this part is done. So another thing, generally when we deploy, right, in VPC, right, we have a two types of security. One is on, so whenever we deploy any VPC, right, there are two layers of security. One is on the VPC layer where we have a network ACLs, right? And then another one is on the instance level, right, where we will deploy that firewalls. Or so here we will use a security groups, right? So let's suppose here if I will deploy that firewall, so here we will deploy a security group. So I have to cross verify that, right? If I am allowing that communication over that internet through my firewall, so is there any road blocker for that network ACLs? So if you are in your organization and if you are managing network ACL, so you have to make sure that you allow your Palo Alto IPs, right? Uh, or whatever the ports through which you want to allow, right? That should be allowed on that network ACLs. But by default, all the traffic on the VPC through that network ACL is allowed. So due to that, I do not need to worry about that, right? So these are my network ACLs. This is for my security VPC, and in this security VPC, I have a three subnets, right? And for that three subnets, all the inbound traffic and all the outbound traffic is allowed. Generally, when we deploy in our organizations, we enable the inbound traffic, and in that inbound traffic, we allow from our on-prem public IPs, right? That only for our on-prem, uh, through that our on-prem public IPs, our firewalls will be accessible because they are on the management interface with that public IP. They are accessible over that public IPs, right? So they will be only accessible through that my office public IPs, right? So you can use that network ACLs, right? Okay, so now my network part is done, right? So now let's deploy firewall. We have to deploy that firewall in management availability zone. right? So now I have to launch instance. So, okay. So earlier, whenever we were launching, right? So we were picking that images from that Amazon Linux or from Windows Linux, right? So these are all operating system. You want to launch it from Mac OS, Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE. So from where you want to launch, right? Here I want to launch it any third-party appliance. So for that, I will select more Amazon machine images. So in that Amazon machine images, which image I want to launch, right? So here I don't want any operating system. Here I want a third party. So I will select a marketplace AMI. So in that marketplace AMI, right? So whatever DLP, whatever web proxy, whatever load balancer, whatever you want, a CS, PM, any of the third party security tool which is available in that AWS marketplace, right? So you can select it. It is just like a Google Play Store, right? It's you just select that which app or which product you want to install on your account, right? Select it here. So I will select it here, Palo Alto. Right. So now these are all list of Palo Alto services which are available in AWS Marketplace. So I can select it here, right? So in this, I will use my BYOL, bring your own license. The reason of selecting this is that because let's suppose if I will go with this Panorama, right? I don't need Panorama. This is a management tool. Similarly, if I will go with that threat prevention, 5 core security. So whenever I will launch that, right, I have to pay for that additional services, right? But if I will go with that, bring your own licenses, right? So that they will give me a very basic firewall without any features, any layer 7 features. So I have to use my own licenses to enable that features. But in my scenarios, I am not going to enable antivirus, anti-spyware, or any layer 7 inspection or any remote VPNs, right? So I will go with very basic, right? So it will charge less amount. So I selected my this firewall, right? So they are saying that hourly I have to pay this amount. So I selected this. Done.
So Manpreet, in the production environment, what image we generally take? Uh,
So again, it's all depends upon that what features you want, right? So whenever we purchase a Palo Alto, right? So we purchase based upon that what features we want. We never purchase any of the firewall with all the features, right? So if you have already DLP solutions, then why you will use that DLP license on the Palo Alto? Similarly for Web 1, right? What go first with that default features, right? Use that in your environment, then customize based upon your requirement, right? Never purchase all the features in one go.
okay. So this is the default image, so that we can
Yes,
take it. Okay.
yeah, right.
Mhm, mhm. Okay.
So under this, I have
Could
to
you please,
create
Manpreet, could you please show me once again which image we have selected and how many vCPUs and what are the requirements for instances? Could
one
you please
second,
show me once again?
1 second. Security key.
Because
So
nowadays, Palo Alto released a new method of licensing, that is vCPU, core-based licensing.
okay,
So we want to check
so
this.
yeah, so when I choose Palo Alto base image that is with that bring your own license, right? So this was that image I have selected, right? And with this image, this is my 8 CPUs and 32 gig of memory I am using, right?
And it can be checked once again because here I can't see uh, the.
1 second.
Could you please show me once again?
Right? So I selected marketplace. In marketplace, I selected a base model.
Wait a
This one, right? Bring
First,
your own
1 second.
license.
Bring your own license. And can we check that configuration of means specification of this thing over here at the same place?
Yeah, you can select this on the Palo Alto side.
But here there are a number of VMC in your license, huh? VMC
Right.
and
So
800,
yeah,
500,
you can see
more
this,
than
right?
this.
So whatever the features they are providing to you.
This is the requirement of this.
Right. This is the usage. This is the overview.
So ports are not mentioned over here, but you are taking a 8 vCPUs in the instance. So I think
So when I'm selecting this, right? So that AWS recommends that, okay, for this one, right?
okay,
The minimum requirement for that Palo Alto is this.
okay. Thank you, sir.
So this is not specifically for, right? So whatever, like if you will deploy that F5 or Cisco, right? So based upon that model, they will select that this is the minimum requirement. If you want to increase your processing power, you can go let's right. So the minimum requirement is this one, right? But I can go to higher one if I have a 64 GB. I can select this, right? 64 GB, 16 vCPUs. It will give me a better performance. But again, as this is my lab environment, right? So I don't want to pay too much cost for my lab. So I will go with that minimum one. So I selected this. I created a one security key pair, right? So now I want to launch this firewall. I want to launch this firewall in my security VPC. So I selected my security VPC. From subnet perspective, I want to launch this in my management subnet, right? And public IP, I want it. It should be enabled so that I can access this Palo Alto firewall, and this public IP will be my management interface IP. Through that, I will access that, right? So from security group perspective, let's create a FW security. Okay. So SSH I want, and I want this HTTPS access, right? So guys, as you said that as we already know that whenever we launch our EC2 instance, right? By default, they are giving a 20 GB of storage. So here I have to pay one for my instance one, because now I am not using a free tier instance, plus the storage. The minimum requirement to launch this firewall is 60 GB. So make sure, if you will do your lab after terminating your EC2 instance, remove your this EBS volume, because this is 60 GB. So you have to pay additionally for this storage as well. So I launched my firewall. So now I launched one firewall in my management interface, right? So now what I'm going to do, I will, here my firewall is ready, right? My firewall is ready, although I have to configure it, right? Now parallelly, I will create one instance here, EC2 instance here, and I will send its traffic to my firewall, right? For a testing perspective, that whenever I will send that, whether its traffic is going to firewall and it is processing through policies through net and go to that internet, right? So I will create one EC2 instance in my private availability zone with no public IP, right? So it will only have a private IP. So one public EC2 instance, I will connect it, launch in public instance. The reason for that is that I will access that as my jump server. This will be my jump server. Through that, I will connect to this EC2 instance, and this EC2 instance do not have any route to my internet gateway. So in this will use my private subnet, right? So this will use my private subnet, but now I have a firewall. So that firewall trusted interface or a private ENI, right? I will create one route for my private subnet, that 0.0.0.0/0 should go to private ENI, and that private ENI is my Palo Alto trust interface, right? And it will hit to that trust interface. From that trust interface, we will do all the routing, and here I will create one untrust interface. So is it? Yeah, it is currently initiating. So let's launch one instance. Public EC2. I will use my security key for this one. I want to launch this in my security VPC. In security VPC, I want to launch it in my public subnet. In public subnet, yes, I want its IP from security group perspective. Let's go with this firewall because they have allowed this 22, and I launched it. Go to that instance, launch one instance. Private EC2. I want this private EC2 to be accessible through my security key, and I want to launch it in my security VPC. In security VPC, I want it to be launched in my private subnet, and in private subnet, I don't want to give any public IP. So let's go with that default security group. Done. My prod firewall is installing. Let's see. On public one, I have a public IP. Okay. And for private EC2, I don't have a public IP, so it will be only accessible over the internet. So now, meanwhile, our firewall is installing, right? So what we can do, we can create a ENIs, right? because now this firewall, when I am deploying that firewall, right, there is only one interface on this EC2 instance. So that interface, I will use as a management interface, right? Through that, I will access my firewall over this public IP, right? But now on that firewall, I want one public ENI and one private ENI. So now let's go to network interfaces. Okay. So this is my firewall. 1 second. Let's see.
Last one, I think.
I have 1 second. .30 is my firewall IP. Yeah, last one. You're right. Firewall ENI. Firewall. Done, right? So now I will create one more interface. Firewall public ENI. And that will connect to my firewall public interface. So where is my public? This is in my public subnet. Done. Security group, I will use this. This is my public ENI. Public ENI. So now I want one ENI for my private interface. I want to launch this in my private subnet. Security group, I am using this. Okay, right. So this one, when I launched my firewall, right? So this one was automatically created, right? This one is used to access my firewall. However, I have now, this is, if you see, this is showing that this is already in use. So I created two more ENIs. One is for my trust interface and one is for my untrust interface, right? So I want to also give one public IP to my public ENI, right? So for that, now what I will do, I will go to that elastic IP. I want one public IP. So I allocate one public IP for my this account. So let's give the name this. ENI. This is my firewall public ENI IP, right? And I want this to be associated with my network interface. So I want to assign this to my public ENI. So I assign this to my public ENI. done. So till this we are clear that what we are doing, right? So now what we did, we launched one firewall here. We created one EC2 instance here, right? So when we create one EC2 instance, by default, one ENI is created to access that interface that was in public, right? Similarly, when we deployed one firewall here, right? That ENI was created for this availability zone so that it should be accessible, right? So this will be accessible and that ENI is considered as a management ENI. Through that, we will access to our firewall from that internet, right? Then we created one ENI that will be used for my public subnet, right? This is my public ENI. And here I pick one public IP from my AWS and attach that public IP to this ENI so that it can send and it can NAT my traffic through this ENI. And similarly, I also created one ENI for my private subnet so that my private subnets can access to my private ENI, right? So two things now we have to do. In my private routing table, I have to route now the traffic to my this private ENI. First thing I have to do. And second thing, earlier what we were doing. So when this firewall, this EC2 instance was sending that traffic through this ENI. So this ENI was managing all my source and destination NAT checks. Similarly, this when I'm using this ENI, right? So this ENI was managing my source and destination check. But now I have to tell to that ENIs that I have my security device which will manage my source and destination check. So you do not need to take care of my source and destination checks of my packet. So I have to disable the source and destination checks on that ENI level, because now that NAT part will be managed through my third party device, right? So these two steps we will do. So how we will do? Go to that network interface, select public ENI, go to actions, change source and destination check, right? So I have disabled that source and destination check because now this interface is connected with that firewall and my firewall will take care of my source and destination check. So this network interface should not to be worried about that. Similarly, for my private ENI, select that, go and disable the source and destination check. This one is done. Similarly, for that routing part, go to that routing table. Where is my private route? This is my private routing table. Go to that routes. For my public routing table, I have a route that for internet access. One second. Oh, sorry, this one is default one. So this is my public one, right? So for that public one, I have a route that for all the internet traffic, go to that IGW. But now for that private routing table, I will say that, okay, so whenever you have to go to that internet, you have to go to the network interface. And in that network interface, you have to go to my private ENI, right? So now my private subnet will send all the traffic to my Palo Alto private ENI. Currently, it is not a Palo Alto ENI because I have not attached with that Palo Alto. But yes, now on AWS level, I have created a route that for all my private subnet, when they have to access to internet, they have to send that request to this private ENI. It is showing a black hole because currently this private ENI is not attached with any device, right? Any network device. So currently they don't have a next hop address. So that is why it is showing status black hole. So as soon as my firewall will be up and this ENI will be attached, I have to verify that whether this status is showing active, right? Okay, so let's see if my firewall is now accessible. Done. It's still taking time, right? So go to that actions, monitor, get instance screenshot. It is showing a, okay. One second, where I have deployed that. I selected my security key. I will save my public key. Security private key. I extracted from that PAM file my public key and a private key. On desktop. This is my private key and what is the public IP of my firewall?
Now it is accessible in behind of the screen.
Yeah, let's see if it is accessible through CLI. Yes, so the default username of Palo Alto is admin. My key is working or not? Yes. Right. Right. So let's change the password, right? I have to configure, and after configuring, I am changing the password of my username admin. I'm putting password. Okay, meanwhile, what we can do, jump back to our firewall. Where is our firewall? So now let's attach that network interfaces, right? So I want to attach my public ENI to this firewall. I attached it, right? So now if I will see, I will have a two subnets, right? 0 was for my management and 1 was for my public, right? So now let's go and attach that another IP as well. Attach network and private ENI. Done. So now this firewall has 3 IPs, one for management interface, right? One for public subnet and one for a private subnet. Now let's see from a routing perspective. Route table, my private route table. Yes, right. Earlier, it was showing that black hole because that ENI was not attached with any of the layer 3 device, right? So there was no next hop. So now it is connected to any of my Palo Alto. So that route is fine. So my private subnet will send all internet traffic to this ENI, and through my public ENI, Palo Alto will send all the traffic to my IGW. Done. So my password is changed. So let's see.
Sonu ji.
Okay, so my firewall is now accessible. Let's go to that interfaces, right? So first of all, I have to configure my first interface, layer 3 interface. Let's suppose I will select it, untrust. From config perspective, virtual router, I will use default one. Security zone, I'm creating new one. So this will be my untrust zone. From IP perspective, I will go with DHCP IP, right, for that interface, and I selected it. Okay. Similarly, this will be my trust interface. The first one was untrust, right? Yes. So this one I am going to create as a trust interface. Config virtual router, I am using default one. Security zone, I am creating new, and this will be a trust one. Done. And from IP perspective, this is my static one, right? So I will disable that default routing. So I go with this. And what additional I need to do? After interfacing, I have to configure that routing and netting and policy. Yes. Go to that policies. Let's create one policy. And trust to trust. Source will be my trust network. Destination will be my untrust network, and action should be allow. Ideally, my firewall interface should be up, but it is not coming up. No IP addresses. So what I will do, let's reboot my device. Guys, I'm also taking 1 minute of break. Let me have a sip of water, right? So meanwhile, if you guys also want to take a break, take a 2 minutes of break, then we will be back.
Okay, man.
Okay, guys, I am back. So, meanwhile, what we can do? Let's log into our public EC2 instance.
Manfi sir, I have a small question.
Yes, please.
Can we edit the local route?
Yeah, you can modify. Yeah.
So we can
Yeah, rather than
target all the
rather than
traffic.
creating two subnets, right? I can use that default subnet, default route for my internet connectivities, and manual route I will create for that subnets which I have to route towards my firewall.
Mhm. Why my
And then please, sir, do we need to add a reverse route as well from Palo Alto to the private and the public subnets?
No.
It's not required.
No.
Okay.
So now that's
Not required, sir, just because of it's a stateful device, correct?
yes, right. Go to firewalls. Where is my private key? Let's see if my PC. Oh.
So
EC2 hyphen
I
user.
was asked this question. Okay. Let's assume we do have the private subnet. Okay. And we do have DMZ and WAN subnet and a different kind of zone. We are calling zone. We do have the different zone, and every zone have the different subnet. Okay. And why I'm calling this, because of if traffic going by the locally, okay, then it could make the crash for us. We would like to pass through all the traffic through the Palo Alto firewall. So we just need to target the all the traffic should go via the Palo Alto firewall uh, as of local subnet, right?
So I honestly I have not understand your query, right? But let me explain you that when we create a reverse routing, right? So let's suppose this is my security VPC, right? Here I have a different VPC, like you are saying DMZ one, right? Here I have a separate one, right? When they all are connecting through that TGW2 firewall, right? Then once that firewall will send that reverse packet, right? Then on these routing tables here, I need to define the reverse routing, right? If you are asking that same query, I have a separate DMZ, separate subnets, right? For that separate one. During that, I have to create a reverse routing where I am using that TGW. So I will cover that reverse routing scenarios as well, right? So this one we are covering very basic one. So we will cover 2-3 scenarios. So right now I am on a public subnet, right? So my public subnet was 10.0.1.0. I have connected to this EC2 instance with my this public IP. Where was it? So I connected to my public EC2 instance and my public through this public IP, and its private IP is 10.0.1.19. 10.0.1.19. So now I have to connect to my, from this I have to jump to my private EC2 instance. And for private EC2 instance, my IP is 10.0.2.196. So first of all, let's see if 10.0.2.196. Okay, so connectivity point of view, it is saying no. But it should not be. Okay, I got it. Anyone has any clue that why I'm not able to connect to this 10.0.2.196?
Yeah, ICMP is not allowed, I think.
Good. Yes. So let's create ICMP for this security group. I am using that common security group, right? So firewall security group. CMP v4. Done. So now what I have to do, SSH, I have to first create a key. Let me see. I'm creating one file with Vim editor vi key. I'm pasting it. I am saving it with saved it. Let me see if it is added. It is added. Done. So now I'm changing permission of my key file. Is so what was the IP of my that device? It is SSH space -I, then key name, then my user is EC2 hyphen user at the rate. What is my IP? 10.0.2.196. So okay. So I am now in my private subnet. From private subnet, I have sent a default route to my firewall. Right. So let's see. Currently, internet is not working through my private subnet. So let's see if my firewall is up. Username was admin, password is okay. My interfaces are up. So let me cross verify. Right, the IP address is 1.0. So this one is my public subnet. Done. And this one is 2.0. So 2 was my private. Done. So what else I have to do? Okay, I have to create one NAT here. The policy is correct. Oh, the naming is trust one trust. Then I have to create one NAT here. NAT name will be netting internet net. My source will be trust. My destination zone will be untrust, and destination interface was my 1/1. Source will be any, destination will be any. From a translated perspective, I will do a dynamic NAT. So in dynamic NAT, I will use my interface, and in interface, which one was my 1/1. Okay, so NAT part is done. Then on routing side, go to that static route. And route destination will be 0.0.0/0. Okay, interface will be my 1/1, right? Next hope will be my 10.0.1.1. This was, I think, my next hope address. Let me cross verify. Yes, done. So my routing is also completed. Let's commit it. I don't think anything else is required. Oh, let's see. For firewall config is okay. Done. So this 10.2.10.0.2.196, right? So this was my private subnet. So now from this private subnet, what I have done in AWS, I have done that for my private subnet, all the route should hit to my this ENI, and this is my Palo Alto private ENI. So what this is doing, so this is sending all the requests to my private ENI, which is attached to my trusted interface, right? So this is my private ENI, right, which is up. So this is attached with my trust interface. As soon as it hits to my third party product, right, then you have to configure your product. If it is checkpoint, ASA, F5, whatever it is, right? So you have to configure is as soon as it is configured. So let's see in the policies, right? If netting is working, definitely netting is working. So I sent 8 ping, I think, right? So I sent that request. So this is now hitting to that firewall, right? After hitting to that firewall, let's see, hit count is increasing from monitoring perspective. Yes, it is accessing, right? So now let's revise what we have did. We created firstly VPC, right? We created one security VPC. After creating VPC, what we did, we created 3 subnets. What 3 subnets I have created? One for my public, one for my private, and one for my management. Why management? Because here I will deploy my Palo Alto firewall. Private subnet where I will deploy my applications or my of servers, whatever, right? So all these will be in my private availability zone. So why created public? One for my jump server, right? One for my jump server, so that if I have to access to any of my private subnet, EC2 instances or any of my application server or services, right? I need one jump server so that I can log into that jump server. And from that jump server, I can access to that application. Apart from that, to go to that internet, right? my after I have created one this was my second section, and third section I created one internet gateway, and that internet gateway is attached with my public availability zone, right? So I created one ENI, two ENIs I have created, one public ENI I have created, and one private ENI I have created. That public ENI I have attached with that Palo Alto, right? To send that traffic to internet. And similarly, one private ENI I have connected with the Palo Alto, so that these all my services or the servers can send that request to Palo Alto, right? Then two important points here. Whenever you create a public ENIs, right? If I will not allocate one public IP to my public ENI, right? My machine will send that request to my my Palo Alto. Palo Alto trust interface will accept that request, and when it will send to that public ENI will not able to route that traffic to IGW because I have not assigned any public IP. So remember, here you have to allocate public IP allocation, right? This thing you have to remember in your lab, right? And second important thing from ENI perspective, you have to remember is that now your ENIs are not managing a netting, source and destination net checks. Now this is your firewall, which will manage your source and destination net on the packet level. So you have to disable source and destination check on your public ENI and private ENI, right? Once this is completed, then for your public subnet and for your private subnet, you have to create a routing table. In that routing table, for public routing table, your internet traffic should go to IGW, right? So that when I will connect my public ENI to Palo Alto, it automatically sends that traffic to my IGW because I have a public route. Similarly, for your private routing table, you have to always take care that your private subnet, where your office organization servers or services are running, they should route to your private ENI so that they sends all the requests to your firewall, right? So once you have this base ready on the AWS, right, then after that, whatever the security device you are deploying in your environment, right, it will you have to do that again, that all the configuration in terms of routing, netting policies, and then it will send that request to internet, right? So this was the one basic deployment of Palo Alto. Are we clear with this, or if we have any query with this deployment?